said I wanted to throw Chad again. No, just kidding. But we're going to go to our next guest. I've got something queued up here because it's right on point with what we were talking about, and I think there's a little intro, but let's see. Person has mentioned a few times in your news stories, I think the one only Dan Kropkin. Dan, welcome to the show. All right, so what we have here is I got queued up the conversation that we had with Dan Kropkin, who was the attorney, of course, for Ter Beek, argued to the Supreme Court, came on the show the day of, I believe, and gave us his opinion. But while I've got that in the queue, I want to get onto the air here to join Rick and myself, Chad, both Victor Vicious Hansen, activist and major supporter and contributor to the Human Solution, former radio show host, and he's going to discuss this crazy situation happening in Delhi Township and its prohibitive policies as well. Joining the show is John Wells from the Northern Lights Provisioning Center, and he's going to talk about this policy in Greenwood Township. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. We're talking about, and we've got Rick and Jamie at this fundraiser in Ann Arbor tonight where they're raising money and raising awareness on this issue. But the basic theme is that there was this Michigan Supreme Court case that unequivocally declared the way in which the makeup of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was going to be affecting the local ordinances and how the federal law, the Controlled Substances, was going to affect the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. And at the end of the day, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act trumps any and all prohibitive ordinances that limit states' rights. Now, footnote 9, as I mentioned before, has been stated, and I don't know if people are officially on record, but many of these cities are relying on, just because they can, and they want to challenge, and they want to, abrogate the protections of state law. But this footnote has brought a lot of problems. It says, contrary to the city's concerns, this outcome, referring to the ruling in Ter Beek, does not create a situation in the state of Michigan where a person, caregiver, or group of caregivers would be able to operate with no local regulation of their cultivation and distribution. What that means is yet to really be determined. I mean, I can tell you what I think it means, but apparently it's going to be needing to be, said by the Supreme Court again. But many cities, townships, and the gentlemen on the phone right now are going to explain to us, still maintain prohibitive ordinances. I know, for example, I have a client in Ypsilanti who was only growing 12 plants, and because he's only allowed to grow 12 plants in either Ypsilanti city or township of. But this would be something that would seemingly not, be abrogating the state right as a caregiver to grow 12 plants per patient. This limitation in this city kept it at exclusively, it's township, Jamie's texting me, township of Ypsilanti, only as a patient growing 12 plants. Now, with that being said, and the discussion and understanding what the Supreme Court has said as a precedent and how this is to be interpreted, let's now turn to some other horror stories. Vic, let's start with you. The city of Delhi or Delhi Township. What is going on there? I know you're going through some weird stuff.
Well, they passed a township ordinance back in 2011 that goes against what is allowed by the Michigan Medical Marijuana Law, and then they amended it in May of this year. And not only does it go against what's in the medical marijuana law, it allows what the medical marijuana law does not allow, and that is the finding of patients or caregivers who are acting within the law. So it's kind of a double thing there. They're trying to not allow what state law does allow, and they're trying to allow what state law does not allow. And the ordinance that we're being specifically charged with breaking, they passed in February of 2011. Well, I've been a medical marijuana patient since, April the 20th of 2009, a registered patient since then. And what they're charging us with is we're within 1,000 feet of a church or a school, etc. In this case, it's a Jehovah's Witness Assembly Hall that we have knowledge of is not really a church at all. It's a place where they have district meetings. So besides the fact that their ordinance is not enforceable based on the decisions that were made in Ter Beek, and as you pointed out, Mike, that was a unanimous decision. All 7 justices on the Supreme Court said the same thing. You know, it's kind of funny that the township seemed to understand or try to tell us that, you know, the medical marijuana law goes against federal law and then federal law rules supreme, but they don't understand why the state law rules over any subdivision of state government, whether that be a township, a county, or a village, or a city, you know, whatever the name is. It doesn't really matter. You can't have a subdivision that writes laws that are enforceable that prohibit what state law allows or allow what state law prohibits.
Be more specific, if you would, Vic. What exactly is an individual not allowed to do? Or you said something about redefining what a patient is.
Right. Well, what they're saying now on May the 6th of just passed, they passed an amendment to the ordinance, and what this amendment says is you can be a patient, like you were talking about in Ypsilanti. You can grow your 12 plants there. You just can't be a caregiver. Well, ouch. Something's going on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Just sound like interference. Yeah. So you can be a patient and grow your plants in that property, but you couldn't be a caregiver according to their ordinance. Well, you know, state law doesn't say. I guess it's kind of like this, Mike. If they perform a traffic stop on me in Delhi Township, they ask for my state driver's license. They don't ask for my Delhi Township driver's license. And we have state cards that allow us to be caregivers or patients, in some cases both. And there's nothing that they can write into law that would be enforceable that would stop us from exercising those rights under state law.
I agree 100%. And so,
yeah.
So what's the state of things right now? Is there? You've been. It sounds like you've been attending and at least trying to explain to them. But they're not budging, and they're just going to try to continue to enforce it. Have there been any arrests or tickets for caregivers?
Well, the tickets that they issued were civil infractions. What happened? We had 4 deputies out at our house, and you know, as they sometimes do, kind of forced their way in, and then they made their report, and they decided not to file any criminal charges against us. A few weeks later, we started getting letters from the township. And, of course, the only way that they could know that a caregiver was living at that address is that the police had shared that information with them. And as you know, Mike, that information is confidential. If they share that information with somebody else, they're guilty of a misdemeanor crime, which is punishable by up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine or both. So what we're saying is the fact that the township knew that there are caregivers that are using that address is against the medical marijuana law. And the ordinance that the city passed regarding this home occupation, in their point 2 of that ordinance, they say that they're going to follow the confidentiality requirements of the Michigan medical marijuana law as much as they apply. Well, you know, saying that if you divulge that confidential information, you're guilty of a misdemeanor crime, of course, means that they're not supposed to share that information, and they did. So they filed this civil complaint, and we were supposed to go to an informal hearing before a magistrate. And I went down and gave them a letter that I had written that explained the reasons that, you know, they can't enforce their city or their township ordinance and so forth. And so my wife and I went to this informal hearing, and we were given a motion of, you know, they decided not to prosecute us. They dropped the prosecution. And the person that filled that paperwork out is a lawyer, and, of course, the informal hearings, neither side is supposed to have a lawyer representing them there. Well, we thought, okay, so they dismissed it, no problem. That was on the 3rd of April that we found out it had been dismissed. On the 5th of May, I was served with papers to take me to civil court with a complaint. All three of us, my wife and her son, are the three that are involved. I'm involved as an owner of the property. My wife and my son is there. Her son is caregivers. So they filed in the circuit court, and I filed an answer to their complaint, and I also filed a cross complaint. The way that they represented what's going on there in their complaint is just so far away from what is in the standard incident report that they based this on, that we think that they're bordering on breaking the Michigan court rules, specifically 2.13 B2B and 2.114 B2B as well.
Well, listen, you mentioned those are what the frivolous.
Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like either frivolous lawsuits, which is. Anyways, the one thing I want to say is, what a terrible nightmare. Unfortunately, this is happening throughout the state. You mentioned about 5 or 6, awful legal issue violations that are protective, and the privacy one is the most offensive. I want to go to John Wells to discuss what's happening in the Greenwood Township. But I did want to mention this privacy issue is fascinating. I had a situation similar to that where a patient's information, a long-standing law enforcement person, had his caregiver had been raided, and on the card, of course, they learned that he was a patient, and they disseminated that information to the gun board. And I agree with you; it's a crime. I actually pursued and tried to speak with the prosecutor of the county to see if he would pursue it, making the complaint. I think even the next person is that's going to follow through on that, don't you, Vic? It would be the one and only Attorney General. I mean, he's the one that's required to enforce at least that law if it's not going to be taken up by your local county prosecutor, who is really the individual that should be receiving that complaint and enforcing it. And I think that those situations, maybe it's something like that where it'll be more. I mean, you need only 1 or 2 prosecutions of somebody that does that to never have it happen again. And
What we did in our cross complaint, Mike, was we tried to point out and give the judge a couple of options. First of all, we wanted a declaratory judgment saying that their ordinance is not enforceable. But past that, we either want the officer who shared that information prosecuted, or in the alternative, because it's now in circuit court as opposed to district court, we want that county judge to say, all the officers under my jurisdiction need to have training on what's in the medical marijuana law and what the privacy rights are of these patients and caregivers, so that this doesn't continue to happen. And because of the way that they withdrew in the district court, and then when they filed the complaint against me, said that there was no pending or resolved action out of this same incident, which I think is just, come on, you're telling the circuit court that you never had this filed in district court? I've got the docket number. I kept all that information. I kept the sheet when I went to their meeting. I've got the evidence. My exhibits are labeled A through P. So we've pretty well got it. We say to where the judge is going to make some decisions that could have impact. Say what? He's going to have to acknowledge Ter Beek versus the city of Wyoming and the fine job that Dan Karatkin, who you mentioned, and the other folks at the ACLU did in filing that. Both the appellate court and the Supreme Court were unanimous. So you've got 10 justices that all say these kinds of ordinances can't stand.
All right, we're going to play a little bit of that from what Dan had to say about it, but I do want to get John on the phone. John, thanks for sticking with us. Let's hear what I'm going to put you on hold real quick, but we're going to come back in a second. But stay with us. John, tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods there in Greenwood Township. And welcome to the show, by the way. Long time no talk. Hope you're well, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's good to hear you, Mike. Well, basically, what's going on in Greenwood is we have had an ordinance, or a moratorium on medical marijuana since 1970. That's what the clerk has told me. I explained to her that we didn't even have ballot initiative till 2008. She explained to me that they have had this moratorium before then. No one in the township is able to tell me exactly when the moratorium took place, when it was written, where it's written, any definition of it, or how long it would last. And after several months of persistent questioning, they finally decided to make a motion that this moratorium would just be indefinite. When I asked them what the moratorium would cover, basically I was told, straightly I was told that it would cover the sale of marijuana. So, not sure where it's written at. I haven't been able to find a copy of it. And every time you start pressing the issue about the moratorium, they want to bring up this white paper report, and I've talked back and forth with some members of Safer Michigan Coalition about this, and we have now a copy of Chuck Ream's green paper report that I'm going to, actually I did submit back to some of the county officials today. But in the event that the moratorium thing doesn't fly with them, what the township above us has done is just zone it completely out. They will not say that they have completely banned it, but the criteria that you would have to meet in order to be a caregiver or open any type of a provisioning center or dispensary is physically impossible inside of that township's borders.
What is the county that you're speaking of? I know we said it was the township of Greenwood. It's for the county of what?
Well, Greenwood sits in Oscoda County.
Okay. And who's the prosecutor there? Do you remember?
Morris, I believe, is her name.
It's Cassandra Morris Bills. Is that who it is?
Yes.
That's who it is. And I have over the past year, I've made in excess of a dozen contact attempts through email, phone calls, and talking to her assistant. She did call back at one point and left a message. She just happened to call at what I consider to be kind of an odd time, but I've since retried the contact with her. Several attempts have been made, and she refuses to talk to us. I've also went down to the sheriff's department and spoke to the sheriff, Kevin Grace, directly. Kevin is friendly, but doesn't really give us much information, and we all know it really wouldn't matter much what he says anyway. The prosecutor's in control of what cases will go through and what won't.
Well,
so we have an elected official that you just can't seem to reach.
Well, you know, it's
no surprise.
Let me back up for a second. First of all, this is maybe one of the most. This may be like the most of the oddest of cities. And the connection to the prosecutor doesn't surprise me. But you are talking about a township, and you know that amongst this, but it's supported by, and the community is behind this. I will tell you that this is very, very strange. I mean, first of all, the information, the simple information that you're trying to get is, and I would think, John, that there are some tools that could potentially be used, such as the FOIA. Freedom of Information Act. It's a form. If you call our office tomorrow, Chad can give you some direction or even email you some stuff in terms of just.
Well, we're all familiar with Freedom of Information Act and everything, but it's going to be hard for us to get anything back through that whenever they never wrote anything down. There is no moratorium. This is just some people talking, and the community is not behind this for the most part. The community doesn't know anything about it except whenever I put up a sign on my billboard or I have a Compassion Club meeting and tell people exactly what they're pulling. However, we are going to start posting the township meetings, the video that we take of them on YouTube, so we can get more of the township residents involved and let them know exactly what's going on. One other issue we had was the last meeting Tuesday. We found out that one of the planning board officials, he made the statement that he is in his 6th year of a 3-year term. He was unaware that there was a term limit, and he's been voting for 3 years outside of his term limit, which would appear to me makes everything that he has voted on since that time null and void.
Again, it gets weirder and weirder. I was going to make this comment, John, and I'm not suggesting that there isn't community support. I didn't want to be misunderstood. I think it may be an image of the prosecutor or the community, the community leaders, wrongly. I had an interesting case out there with that prosecutor, and I do know that she's very young. I would even say not even worldly enough possibly to have the job and make the decisions that are needed. I felt that there was a real lack of understanding of the way the system works, even at its most, vicious way. And she argued in a case that my client, where the police had left 60 plants because they were in an enclosed facility, but then arrested her and charged her with delivery of marijuana, possession of that deliver, and a gun charge because of marijuana that was, not the marijuana, loose marijuana was not in an enclosed facility. And my most favorite argument that I made to the judge, because it was so ridiculous of what was going on, and I couldn't emphasize how, anything, and I said, Judge, if the prosecutor can find anywhere in the law that it says the marijuana, not the plants, has to be stored in a enclosed facility, I will eat my tie. And she wasn't able to do it, and I didn't have to eat my tie. But it is absurd up there, and I got the sense that it didn't matter. Like the things that you're talking about, this kind of sidestepping of recognition. There are potentially a couple legal approaches you could take. I've had some experiences with the circuit court judge up there now a number of different times, and I think he's getting more aware of it. He's a little bit ornery, but I think that these legal issues, if you're going to press them, you got to press them, and you got to keep pushing forward and take them to the law of the higher court. That's not just we don't do it like that here. You should know that. You know what I'm saying? But what an awful experience. Tell me what has been the personal reaction to you? These experiences that you're getting are coming primarily from the clerk's office, that you're going and trying to get information, or is it from talking to, the law enforcement community or the city attorney? Is there a city attorney?
The prosecutor I haven't had any contact with at all because she refuses to. The sheriff's department seems friendly enough, and they're not going to try and cause an issue, but it seems like maybe they don't really know a whole lot about what's going on or what the law is. Some of our real issues come from the township, and when you bring out or point out some of these problems and things that the township are doing, like violation of open meeting laws and talking back and forth through emails, discussing things, votes being determined before the vote is ever taken, then whenever you bring stuff like that up during a meeting, you get the township supervisors looks at me and looks at the sheriff and says, "Oh yeah, I'm hearing that they're having a lot of problems with people driving under the influence of marijuana." Well, I did some digging and I looked at the statistics, and actually that's a load of crap. Everywhere that there is a medical marijuana, or at least legalization effort, it looks to me like the statistics show a decline in that type of activity. So I just see it as intimidation. And when it's not right there during the meeting, there's other things that the township does. I have a billboard, and I put a Compassion Club sign up on the billboard. A little bit after that, I get a letter from the township. Well, you need a permit to do this. Well, I've never needed a permit to do that before. I've had that sign for over 10 years, and I've never once had to pull a permit to put a sign up on it or change the advertiser. They did this several years ago and cost us a $12,500 lien and our lease, and at the time the agreement was made with the old township supervisor that I would not seek damages against the township as long as this never happened again. And, well, here it is again, and it looks like this time they're trying to wield the code enforcement as a threat or an item of intimidation to use against me.
It's awful. I can't even begin to explain. So, some of the things like signage maybe, in terms of like the legality of what I could foresee cities in an area that doesn't directly influence, violation of the Michigan medical marijuana, but it couldn't be based on content itself. You know what I mean? It would have to be based on there's no signage, we don't allow it for anybody, but certainly they can't restrict the content of the message and allow for some and not others. You know what I mean? So
that's exactly correct, and we already argued this with information from the National Sign Council several years ago. Again, it's just a ploy, a tactic that they use. But what we found was we went just one township east of us, and we found out that this is a primarily Amish township, and we were welcomed with open arms. The people have been super supportive. There's a nonstop string of people coming in and out telling us how great it is that we're there. And, I tell Greenwood Township this, and they just don't care. They have it in their head that they're going to do things the way they're going to do things, and that's it. They even brought in a couple gentlemen that, so we have a 3-year term limit on our planning commissioners, and 2 of them are up. Their term is up. So actually a few months ago, I was offered one of those positions, and all of a sudden at the last meeting, 2 guys were brought in that we've never seen before. One guy just moved into town, and they took a quick nomination, and that's it. They're going to put these guys through to the regular township board to vote them in. It's just some really kind of backwoods type government going on here.
How awful it sounds that way. This is not an uncommon thing. I almost felt like that was the impetus of the resistance. When I was there, the prosecutor was just, we're not going to do it that way, and nobody really had ever pressed the issue. I know it's very difficult, living within the community, because the more you push, sometimes the more attention that's drawn to you, the more pressure you may feel. It's very, very challenging.
Well, here's one of the odd things. It is a lot of pressure on us, and it actually forced us to open our store in a different township. But the weird thing is, we do have a dispensary in Greenwood Township that's been operating for several years. The guy that owns that dispensary I am fairly cordial with, and he's the one that let me know how the township was going to vote before the vote was ever taken, because the supervisor told him. So, they're adamantly opposed to me doing anything in the township or anybody else, yet this other gentleman is basically given free rein to operate as he pleases. And that's not just with the township. That's basically, to my understanding, countywide.
That's what happens when you give local control.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the, I guess you could say, arguments or concerns of the existing bills right now, that we're going to find that there's going to be the ability of the local control to not just not allow for medical marijuana provision centers, but beyond. And that is a concern I think a lot of people have. But, John, so...
Well, we've actually asked them what since they have this moratorium that bans the sale of marijuana, and I have that on video, that's what was said. Okay, since that is the moratorium criteria, what is the enforcement? What will be the punishment if this moratorium is broken? And no one on the board could answer that. And when I asked who would be able to answer it, no one was quite sure who would be able to answer the question. So the whole thing seems kind of silly, but nonetheless, here we are.
Well, I mean, I hate, just from if, any lawyer listening to this would be pained in the inability to get the information. I mean, I understand, and I'm not saying you have not. It sounds like you've climbed mountains, and it shouldn't be that hard. That's just a big, and I know you probably, that's the most frustrating thing, because there should be clarity. I mean, you're going to enforce laws, you got to have, people have to have notice of it and have an understanding of it. But, so what's the next plan from here? Do you think, what is your strategy, and how are you advising those close to you and around in that community of what is the play? Have you thought that through? Is there a, like a strategy moving forward? Are you going to try to rally the troops and have a big presence at the city meetings, or what?
Well, we've tried that in the past, and we've had our signs torn down and thrown back in the woods, and it's kind of hard to reach some people in our area because we are a rural area. Very few people actually have even internet access up there. But I think one thing that I'm just going to encourage everybody to do is, if you're going to remain in Greenwood Township, then do not let anybody know. Basically, fly underneath the radar. I don't think they can just come into your home and search to see if you're a grower, caregiver, or patient. And everybody can just go to the next township down, I guess, and Greenwood will just have to take the financial hit on that, because, it could be beneficial to them, but they don't seem to care. There's also kind of there's just a mentality of uneducated ignorance when it comes to medical marijuana and what it's capable of, what it can do, what the laws are. I bet there's not a meeting goes by that there isn't a comment made that's just, to some activists, that would just be infuriating. It is to me whenever I hear them. But I can't gather enough people in that area to get into the township meetings yet. So, it's basically just me and maybe one or two friends that I know that are patients, caregivers, or whatever, that can come. And not everyone is comfortable kind of taking on these township officials either, because, well, you do live in the township and you do see the type of retaliation that can be yielded against you, so they're kind of cautious about getting too involved. So, like I said, at this point, I've opened my store in another township, and we're doing well there. I still live in Greenwood, and we'll go along and file some Freedom of Information Act forms and see if we can pinpoint maybe some of these things on paper, such as the open meetings law violations and discussions of things outside of meetings that shouldn't have been discussed. We'll just have to see what we can find.
I hear you. So is there, are you operating, what's the premise of, you say store, and we don't get too specific, but is it, it's not in the...
Well, we call ourselves a provisioning center, and we call ourselves Northern Lights Provisioning Center, and basically we opened in an old head shop that was there years ago. We've tried to restock and resupply with all of the head shop stock that they had before, and put a new twist on it, a more upscale twist. And at the same time, in our situation, we believe that under the law, we are only allowed to do transfers to our registered patients. I know that other dispensaries and provisioning centers around the area do transfers to any valid card holder, but my understanding of the law is that I can't do that. So that's basically what we're doing, is just keeping the place going out of pocket until we can see one of the House bills come through to open up the door. And it's really sad because every day there's between 2 and 3 people come through the door, and they have a card, they have an ID, and you can see they're in pain, they're in agony, they need the medication, but now they can't get the medication. They got to drive 30, 40 miles one direction to another part of town just to get the medication, and by the time they spent that much money and fuel to do that, that reduces the amount of medication they can purchase, and it's just really putting an undue stress on the patients in our area.
I hear you. It's awful. And it's too bad there's not more reasonableness that's going on. Do you think that community is going to be one that would pass a local, if given the local option, that they would in fact pass a provisioning center bill?
Well, I'm working with that township right now, and I've already submitted a packet of information to the township officials, and I've had some conversations with them. They did seem very open to discussions, very open-minded about it, and I'm thinking that with a little bit of training and educating on how this can be done correctly, I think that they're going to allow us to stay planted where we're at. I don't think we're kind of in an odd spot there because there's 4 townships come together right at a point in that one spot. My understanding is 2 of those townships have moratoriums that would prevent any dispensary or provisioning center from opening. The other 2, one of them is which where we're at, they don't have anything on the books, but they, I'm sure if something passes, they will put something on the books. So we want to work with them to draft an ordinance that's beneficial for the township and for us as business owners and for the patients in this area. There's no reason that we all can't help each other out. We're not, we don't have these big drunken parties. The cops aren't always at our store. We're involved in our community. We give back. We give donations to the local food drives. We do whatever we can to be a part of the community. And I really think that's going to be key to a lot of communities accepting these types of establishments in their community is whenever they see that you are giving back and you're not being a disruptive force in the community.
I agree, and I think getting in early and being responsible is key. All right, listen, I didn't realize how long we were talking there. I want to get some other callers on the air, but John, it's a fascinating story. It sounds like you got a good grasp on it. I'd like, I'd like to get you back out in a couple of weeks and see if there's any updates and just keep us informed. And
absolutely, again, Mike. It was great to hear from you again, and I will definitely call back in and keep you guys updated.
I appreciate it. Have a great night, and look forward to talking to you.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's John Wells from Northern Lights Provision Center in Greenwood Township, and the producer wants me to take a break and come back and get some other callers that may be present at and with him at his event, fundraising at the Safer Mish in Monroe St, Ann Arbor, Dominick's. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break and come back and do that. You're listening to Planet Green Trees. Call number is 1-347-326-9626. We may even have Attorney Matt Abel calling in with Jamie, the producer. But we are going to be right back.